especially my pre-algebra students, because they're caught up in grades, right? They're your gifted kids who have been ingrained in them from an early age. You get all A's, you know, you don't like your B's, and a lot of them are even working for scholarships and want, you know, high GPAs, trying to get into GAT and all those things. And so they are trained to, I got to get an A. And their first thought was, "This gonna take our principal's list?" And I'm like, "Principal's list? No, like you'll still make good grades because if you know the content, then you'll have a good score essentially." But it was so funny hearing it from them because that was ingrained in them. And then I kind of showed them a comparison of, okay, if you took a quiz normally, or if you took a quiz based on what standard space grading is, you can still get credit. So if you miss it, you can still get credit based on your understanding, based on your work. And at the end of the year, they were like, "Is everybody else going to do this?" I'm like, "Listen, I don't know. I'm barely making this. I doubt it." But so they realized they made that transition. It took a little while me convincing them and just saying, "Listen, just do it. I know what I'm doing. Trust me." But they realized at the end that I'm not getting penalized for what I don't know. I'm able to prove it and show it, and I got multiple chances to do that. So it shifts from just getting a grade for the sake of grades to actual mastery, and from just effort to growth. Because a lot of kids take a lot of effort to copy that homework down from their friend, right? You're like, "This is amazing," but they did nothing but simply copy, as opposed to showing that growth. So I tell my kids, who cares where you're starting from? We just want to see you improve over time. And if you're improving, even if you start at the bottom, you improve a little bit, that's what we want to look for. I think that's important, especially in our age of testing, because let's be honest, some kids will never ever be distinguished. It doesn't matter what you do. You can take them, adopt them, and tutor them 24/7, and they still won't be. But it's all about growth. Are you improving from point A to point B through the course of a unit, a semester, a year, your whole education? If you are, that's what's most important. So in my classroom, I use these levels of masteries. I use 4 different levels because it equates very well to K-Prep in those 4 levels, and they kind of know those levels. I know some people use 3, so it just depends. I even use half levels too. So, you know, I think when you're trying to figure out what does mastery look like for me, it needs to kind of match up with your content. I teach math, so I think math is sometimes a little bit more cut and dry as opposed to identifying the levels, where other subjects it may be a little bit, you know, not as clear. But my level 4, I just call it habit, and that means they pretty much know all the content. They mastered it, they're successful, they're good. 3 is my simple mistake, and I have a level 3 simple mistake because with math, you can do everything right, but just have a small computational error, and your answer is wrong, but your process is right. So I like having this level because with math, you see that a whole lot, especially my pre-algebra kids. They'll do everything right, you just have a 5 instead of a 2, and that throws their answer off. And that's why I appreciate them. Show your work, and then I can just say, check this, as opposed to X that's wrong, you lose 5 or 10 points. But I say they know about 80 to 90% of the content. So I tell my kids, we strive for 4, but we're okay with 3s. Because typically with 3s, by the end of the unit, the year, whatever, you figure that out, you know, you may not make that mistake again. And typically when I have my kids redo their assignments, I can just give it right back to them. They can say, "Oh, that's the mistake I made." So we strive for those levels. Now level 2, I call almost there. So they know about 50% to 80% of the content. So those are those students who know some of the process, but there's still gaps in their learning. And you know, for math, I say if there's 4 steps, they leave out 2 of them, or they mix up some steps, things like that. Level 1 are my poor kiddos who just need more help. They don't know it yet. They need me to go back. So these kiddos, I think, maybe I can show them a couple videos, touch base really quick, and let them do more practice. These kiddos are more your sit down with them one-on-one and kind of walk them through those type of things. Any questions on those levels? So I like when we do assessments, they get 1, 2, 3, or 4. And it's been kind of hard teaching them. Don't look for a number grade. You're not going to see a number grade. You're literally looking for 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. Anything under a 4 can be corrected and redone. 1s and 2s, you need to correct it and redo it. And that's what I keep preaching. We had parent-teacher conferences. That's what I kept saying to the parents over. They're like, "Well, look, you can look here." I'm like, "Yeah, that's 25%, but that just means if 1 out of 4, ignore the percentage. You just need to know, I see a 1, my child needs to do practice. They need to improve." So it's kind of hard telling that to parents. Once I tell them, they're like, "Oh, they can redo it." I'm like, "Yeah, nothing is final in here. Nothing is permanent." And once they hear that, "Oh, so they can redo it. Make sure you redo that when you go to class tomorrow." So it makes it a little bit easier for them to understand it. So I give lots of assessments. I give tons and tons of formative assessments. I also usually give pre-assessments at the very beginning of the unit, so I kind of know what they know. So if a kid already knows something, I don't want to reteach it to them. That's boring and that's wasting their time. And I give post-assessments, but it's almost kind of like the final formative assessment. You know, I don't know if you don't know if you really should give summative assessments anymore, because if they don't master it, I think you should still give them an opportunity to go back and look at it again. And that has to be done outside of normal class time, but I think you should still allow that. So I kind of think of that as my final formative for that unit before we move on to something else. So here's just a quick video about formative assessments. And this guy is like the man when it comes to standards-based grading. I didn't want to think he was going to sit through a 34-minute video that he had, so I just picked this one. And I may not even play all this, but he has some good information.
One of the things that comes up when you get into a differentiated class, let alone one that's standards-based, is you have to begin to weigh formative versus assessment. Now, summative assessment is actually anticlimactic. It really refers to post-learning, after all is said and done. So it's the final declaration. Usually there's not a lot of capacity to go back and revise one's efforts and be assessed and accredited anew. But one thing that teachers forget is that something that was intended to be summative, child does poorly, for whatever reason, you're allowed to make it a formative assessment. Something that was summative now becomes formative. That's actually okay. It's within your prerogative. But what about formative assessment? Well, of the two, teachers tend to spend the majority of their time designing their summative assessments, as if that was the most important aspect. But really, it's formative assessment. That's the most important aspect. It's the greatest impact on student achievement, on feedback to the teacher, everything. The whole enterprise of teaching and learning really boils down to that formative assessment. Can kids learn without grades? Yeah. Can they learn without formative assessment and the feedback that comes from it? Not at all.
All right, so I want to stop it there. So I like how he says that we spend most of our time, and we all know that we've been trained and taught and beat over the head with plan the assessment first, right? Because you plan the assessment and then all your instruction ties to that. But what he's saying is that really the formative assessment, what you do kind of in between, is what's most important, because that's what changes. That's what allows you to see, are they understanding it, are they matching it, and if they're not, what can I do differently? Then it's not saying get rid of summative altogether, because there's value in that. You can still track growth and learning and understanding. But the things we do in between, the everyday things, those are the things that really count. All right, so here is just, I use this little graph in my classroom, and it's not, amazing or anything, but I give this to my kids. So we started the Leader in Me initiative, so we all started leadership notebooks last year. And so this year I'm using a data notebook in my classroom, and I'm really going to start it after fall break. I gave this to them for the first little unit we did, but yeah, they just saw it and we talked about it, and we didn't really feel anything because I was too swamped. So after fall break, we'll actually start using these. But I give this to my students so they know what cluster are we talking about. These are the standards that go underneath the cluster. And then here's a little table there. I also make them write their own student-friendly targets. So kind of at the beginning of the unit, I divide the targets out, the standards out, they like underline, circle the words they don't know, they look it up, and in a groups of 2 or 3, they come up with their own student-friendly target. Because let's be honest, like teachers look at that and like, what does that mean? Like, I don't even understand what they're talking about, let alone my 7th grade students who probably can't even pronounce some of the words. So I have them break those standards down into student-friendly, so when they see that, instead of saying inference, they say, oh, I'm just making an educated guess. Instead of saying simple, they're saying, oh, just individuals that are alike. And they put it in language that makes sense for them. So that saves in their leadership or their data notebook. And then, this is very like plain and barbaric, but it still gets the job done. Now here's my levels of understanding. As we take different assessments, they put the name there, and then they write down their levels here. And that way they can just see, as we take assessments, are they growing, are they not growing, are they progressing, and how that works. So that's kind of what we use in our classroom, so that the students keep track of their learning. And so it's more meaningful for them. And we will touch base on this after each one, and they'll write that information down. And that way they can see, if you're literally writing down 1s and 2s, you should be coming to me. It's not like a secret that I'm holding. You're seeing this on your papers, you're writing this down, so you can come to me and check. So it makes the ownership more on the students and not just on me. And so I just have extra tables here so that we have multiple assessments. One thing that I've learned, I actually had a meeting with a teacher and some at South Warren, and they talked, and I used to do formative assessments, and it was very formal formative assessment in that I gave like quizzes. Every 3 learning targets, I gave a quiz. So it was still formative. But then after talking with them, I realized, well, I give ethics tickets all the time. That's formative assessment. I give warm-ups every day. That's formative assessment, And so now I'm going to use more of all that data. So I would only use my quizzes because I was math, so right, you give quizzes in math, this is what you do. Even though it was formative. So now I'm realizing, no, if they do that one problem at the end of class, I can still use that and they can keep track of what they're learning and understanding. So that's why I have these multiple tables here. But that's something I use with the kids that have them, actually understand what they're learning and what we're doing. So when they see 7SP1, it's not just some foreign code up there that only the teachers know. They're like, oh, we're just doing this, and that's the target that goes with it. So that's one thing that I use as well. So for my classroom, nothing is ever final. They can make corrections, do more practice, take other assessments all the time. And I tell them now, you may have to come after school, you may have to come early, you may have to do it after lunch, do it during lunch, because after we move past the unit, you're going to be doing other things in class. So they can do target practice and practice the targets they don't know. I give them target boosters so they can take other assessments that boost up their levels. So nothing is ever final. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I make them up. Yeah, I have the Carnegie textbook, so they have a bank of questions, and then just other resources I just found, but yeah, I just kind of make them up. But sometimes it's just maybe like one short answer question that kind of encompasses, all of them. So I think especially after they've done more practice, they may not need a separate problem for each target. It could be just, here's this big idea, can you apply it to this big idea? Which is really better than what they need to be doing. But yeah, sometimes I'm struggling to come up with these things. It's not anything fancy, it's literally, it's just, but Carnegie does do a good job. They have multiple choice questions. They have a pre and a post assessment. They also have a end of unit. So they have like 4 or 5 different assessments. So you have a lot of bank and forth from them. But I also use like Problematic. I use that online. I use Achieve the Core. I go to Illustrated Map. A lot of and just pull them and just make it into an assessment. Because the kids don't know any better. So it could be a homework or something, or it could be a task, and I can make it for an assessment. Okay, so here's a couple of rubrics, because one thing I also learned this summer, or early part of the school year, is that instead of me putting down the levels for the kids, you should give them a rubric and have them put the levels on there. So that way when you say, go home and talk to your parents about this, and I'm like, I don't even know what to say, what are you talking about? My teacher gave me a 2. Why? I don't know, she just didn't let me tell you about it. As opposed to, here's this rubric, and there's just one for math, so you don't have to worry about even trying to read it. But this kind of breaks it down into the different levels. It gives them some criteria they're following, and the students themselves can take their work and give their own score. And I think this is so powerful, because now it's not the teachers. You just gave me some number. I don't know why you gave me a number. She just gave me a 3 like my friend got a 3. No, it's them looking at it. And then of course, you're going to have to coach them through it, right? You're going to have some kids who got a 3 because they're friend, and you're like, no, maybe I don't think, show me where that is. Where did I see that? But this, I love this. Now, am I there yet? No. Am I praying I get there and make them up before break? Yes. Will I? Who knows? Her for the first couple, But I think this is the next step to really make standards-based grading stick, is to put it in the hands of the kids. So they take the assessment, they come up and get the rubric, and they're saying, based on my work, here's where I am. And so when they circle or mark or whatever that one do, you immediately go get practice. There is no, well, I forgot, or you didn't tell me to do it in class. It's instant, automatic, and they see that. Look, and I just Googled these online and found them. That's the math one. This one is a ELA one. And they had tons of, the one site I went to, they had one for art, they had one for science, but it kind of just demonstrates kind of what they need to know. And that may be a generic one that you use all the time, or it could be specific depending on a unit or a project or something that you're doing. But I really like that idea of it. Now, is it going to make like my workload 10 times hard? Of course, but you're a teacher, so you just pile it on and keep it moving, right? Yeah. Okay, so here are some templates I saw. First of all, who loves Pinterest in here? Yeah. Guys, I know, you can admit it, we won't, yeah. But I just Googled this and got tons of ideas for Pinterest. So you probably are already using this if I don't know but you're probably already using this if you use standards-based grading in Pinterest, but there's tons of ideas there, some kind of charts, different levels, so that's always good to use if you like to use that. And these are 2 things, I'll be honest, I literally found these today during one of the sessions and added it, and I'm so stinking, I'm so excited because it looks like it's going to give another way to show grading besides the Infinite Campus, which I have like a love-hate relationship with. So this is just showing, now I will say this says $5 a month, and I'm all about free stuff, right? So I don't know if you want to use this or not. And I actually think this was at the end of one of those videos that I showed you. But let me see, I'm going to see how you can export it. But it seems like you have, I'm not even going to click on these videos because you're going to export it later, but it seems like it shows a more user-friendly way to show learning targets and their mastery level, more so than Infinite Campus. Don't ask me any questions because I don't know. Do you use this?
I don't have a question. I was going to give a comment. I don't use Active Grade, but our school uses Haiku, and I've